Next one, please. This is what is called the Partiki template, or the Rashabadi template. So it is the template of spheres upon which the Rashabadi then grows and expands. Now what it has is, just like the Partiki, just like the little Partiki had, is 15 gelasic layers, 9 inside and 6 outside. Same here. They have this. They are made of the same gelasic radiation substance as far as quantum and type of force and type of energy as the Partiki. So they have the same encryption. So they have the same tones, sounds. And here we have what are called 15 gel layers. And in between them, just like with the Partiki, but this is much bigger, is the 15 crystal bands. Now this is in the template. We have layers and bands in the template. And at the center of this, the center inside of the Nada 1 layer sphere, is an Akusha crystal that's called the Krystala core. We've heard before somewhere out in K23 land, I think, about the Krystala core. And this is where the Krystala forms inside of the Rashabadis. And remember, all of those other things, going all the way back to the Tarn, are down inside of that. So this is, it's almost like, it's literally a point that these spheres start growing out of from that center creation point. So we have the Rashabadi templates. They have their pillars of power. And this is where we get, and out here is what is referred to as the Oriya dark light and sound field. All right, they haven't described too much about what that is yet, but they have got us to the point where we can see where we have got the Rashabadi template. And each one of these Rashabadi layers has names that I'm still tripping over, and when I'm this tired, I'm not going to confuse you by trying to spend 3 minutes to get one word out of my mouth. Just so you know that these are the stages of Rasha building. We get to the Partiki template, and that was done through the 6 cracks, the 6 pops, the little bang. And that gives us the Rasha body template. Now, at the center yet, you don't have something called the prana seed, but very soon you will. Next one, please. Now, in the template, if you had noticed, there were, just like there were key lines in the little Partiki, there are what are called fire chambers. And there also are sets of, at this point, that phases, and it actually it contracts, sparks, and expands, builds as quantum, pulls in, and pops back out again with an expansion around itself that is larger yet again. That is called the Partiki body. Before you had the template, and then you had the body growing out from there. So this is bigger. Now, what were the 15 layers of the Partiki template are now referred to as the rings of the Partiki body, or the Rasha body. And in between them, what were the crystal bands are now referred to as the crystal spans. And later, these become what are called orbs. These, just like we had the Partiki template, that was a smaller version, and out of which expanded the next level of expansion or quantum building that formed the body. This serves the same purpose. This is the dark matter template for the light matter body, or for the light body. So the light body will come from this structure, and it will reflect the structure with the 15 layers. But it gets better. There's more things that happen at the end of this, where we're not done growing the Rasha yet. The Rasha grows because, just like the Partiki, with its fire lines and deformed keys, this has a set of very particular types of crystals on 3 of the bands, and they're called Alon crystals, Shalon crystals, and Kalon crystals. And our bodies have these too, and they have to do with the blood crystals, the bone crystals, and the skin crystals when it comes to our bodies. But in the Rasha template, the cosmos has these. Every planet has these. Every structure manifest has sets of Alons, Kalons, and Shalons. They call these the ASKs sets, or ASK, right? ASK. And out here, there are a set of corresponding what are called orons. And the orons put an O on the end of the ask set, so we got ASCO sets. Now, there's a set, there's an alon, a shalon, and a kalon, and an oron aligned on each fire chamber. There's a certain point in building in the Rasha body that, as far as quantum building, that by the Rasha body, not pulling into center, but just contracting a little bit, the first little bit contraction makes the first layer rub into the core, into the crystalla, and what else is in there that I'll tell you in a minute about. It's called the prana seed. Right? And when the first layer rubs into the core of the Rasha body, it sparks, makes those friction sparks. When it expands back out, when the contraction releases, the ring 1 comes back out, and the sparks that were made in ring 1 transfer into band 1. The bands are considered, or the bands, which are now called the spans. The spans are considered, if you have ring 1, the band or span around it would be called the 1.5 span. So you have the ring and the span with the numbers going together, but there'll be a 0.5, like halfway between the 1 and 2, 1.5. That way, that's how these work. So you have your 1 through 15 straight numbers that have to do with each of the bands, or each of the, rings. And in between them, you have the 0.5 scale that has to do with the crystal, the crystal spans, which are orbs. They're not just rings, they're literally orbs. These crystals that were birthed with the Partiki body, Rasha body, the ASKO sets, they will fire or do something with each other after all of these rings, through a contraction, rub into the core just a bit to make sparks of that ring, and then on the release of the contraction, it charges the span. Those sparks go in and store their quantum in the span. Then there'll be another little bit stronger contraction, and that will bring ring 2 in. And then when that contraction releases, the ring 2 sparks will go into the 2.5 span. And it works all that way up until we get to here. Now, this is the ring 7, and this is the 7.5 ring. Yeah, right. Again, I'm sorry if I'm tripping over myself tonight. It is just I'm exhausted. This is the 7 ring. This is the 7.5 span between ring 7 and ring 8. All right. So we have the ma and the ta. So this is the mata. This is where mata ores that become matter ores form. Or is a word for light, by the way. And here it takes contractions of all of these until finally the 7th contraction would bring ring 7 in to make it sparks. Ring 7 would expand back out and bring its sparks in to the 7.5 span. And that would begin a process. It would begin to charge the alons. The alons, by the way, are the jewel holders. All right, they hold stored radiation, prana jewels, in the form of prana. So they have quantum that is not directly expressed, but the fact that they are there implies there is a manifest quantum or a materialized quantum that corresponds to it. All right. So, but they don't do anything yet. There's a thing that happens, though, when the next contraction pulls ring 8 and this band, or this span, in, and they both spark, and when it expands back out at 8.5, it triggers what are called the shalons. When the shalon gets sparked, there's a process that's called fertilization of the lons that starts to take place, and that is where this one, because its core activates from the sparks that interacted with it, and this one, which already had its core activated, this one begins to pull up. The alon begins to pull up into the shalon, which triggers a reaction in the kalon, and the kalon begins to descend down into the shalon. And when the alon, shalon, and kalon come together at the Kama band, this is where we got the Kama Sutra stuff and all that kind of thing, the Kama 8.5 band, That is called fertilization of the lawns, and it leads to a process later, after the rest of these spans, rings and spans, contract, charge, and then charge their bands. Right? They spark the rings and charge the bands. When it gets out to here, and after a set of 12, there's a reaction in the orons, and the orons start to do something of interacting with these. And this is happening simultaneously on all 12 of the fire chambers. So it's not just one set, the whole set will go into fertilization. And this is the process. This is where we begin to understand what a Navajo cycle is. It's a conception cycle, a fertilization conception cycle. It's the process by which the partokai, the first two partokai for the next domain out, will be born. And that would correspond with, when we look at those cycles, when we hit the 6 axis with birth of the Adon 144, halfway through that 6th tachyon cycle is where we would hit the Navajo cycle. And by the time we hit 7, that would be the conception point. If we back it a little bit up to the halfway point of the 6th cycle, for ages we've been showing that on graphs as called the Hetharo point. And then halfway into that, before you get to line 7 or axis 7, you have the Hethalon point, which is August 12th. All right, like every year it is August 12th, just like every May 27th is the Hetharo point. These points correspond with something called the prana exchange cycle, and that corresponds with, first of all, the fertilization of the lawns. The fertilization of the lawns, I believe, occurs at the end of the Hethalon. And then there is a process that by the time you get to axis 7, that is when conception of the lawn occurs. And that is when Partakai 1 is born, all right, for the next domain out. So there's a whole process here by which not only is it seeding the Partakai for the next system out, it's not even done birthing out yet its own light body structure for its domain. So there are numerous things happening at once, but they happen through a process called prana exchange. I mentioned before, and that's why I spent a little bit of time on reminding everybody about how the keys work, the harmonic keys work, where we had the man A, and it went through key resolution, which broke it down into the quantum equilibrium of prana, positive charge, 11 2/3 Partakai power base, and the quantum differential, which is the mana. So prana and mana start to come into the picture here. And later we end up with Manu and Ek as well. But that's later, after we get toward the conception phases. So these are different types of Jalesic radiation. These are not just energy. These are also consciousness. The consciousness field of God's source is conscious, intelligent, aware, highly ordered. It's not just an erratic form of radiation. Radiation is the closest to manifest form that consciousness exists in. Consciousness is the first substance. In truth, consciousness is the only substance, and it's a non-substance. But anyway, I want you to, as we're thinking of these, and I'm talking a lot about energy and a lot about the physics part of it, but not to forget that we're also talking about consciousness in massive forms. Every one of these light body structures or these rasha body structures, they are gestalt of consciousness, a being you could talk to, a collective of beings you could talk to, a collective of beings that you are a part of, which is implied by the fact that you have a matter body out here. So you have a part of your own microcosmic structures that look like this, that are one of those faces without faces in these consciousness fields. So if we can remember that it's also about spirit and about consciousness and about identity and those type things. When we talk about the energy a lot, sometimes it's easy to forget about that. So I wanted to point that out. Now, what happens here with the Alons, Kalons, and Shalons phasing. Alons, Kalons, I know Alons, Shalons, and Kalons. That's how I say it. Asks, ASKs. All right. There's something that when this whole structure birthed out with its Alon, Shalon, and Kalon and Oron sets, at the center of it, there birthed out a quantum that is referred to as the prana seed. All right. It's made of what are called eta ors, or ethers. And the prana seed is, let's see, I think I have it on one of the next diagrams. Actually, I think I saved that for the end because they're going to cover this a little bit more fully as, just the phasing process to understand it. Now we're trying to do structure. But at the center of this is where, when we start to talk later about the more intricate structures of how this phases and the prana exchange process, the prana seed is born here. It is born at the center of the Partiki body, or the Rasha body. And remember, inside of that, you have the Kristalla and you have the Partiki template and all of those things going back behind. So things are getting larger and larger, and they're still not even out into the visible or external light spectrum in one domain. Right? So I just wanted to see where this started. This is the Rasha body structure. Before we get heavily into how the Alans, Kalans, and Shalans, and Orans phase through the prana exchange process to allow for an opening of the creation point all the way back through for periodic bursts of flow both ways. For a backflow, which would be an ascension wave going home, or an outflow, which would be a birthing wave coming out from source. If you think of it in terms of the macrocosm, these are literally the waves by which consciousness comes back and forth and circulates through the spirit body and its manifest parts. I'll leave it that right there. There's names for all those parts and that body. But for now, here we are at the Rasha body. This expands, this gets bigger. Let's see the next one, please. What this does next, I believe, if that's the diagram, I think it is. Oh, yeah. This is talking about the prana seed a little bit more. There's another one after this that shows something else that I want to get to. But that prana seed I talked about at the center, that is made of etaors, or ether radiation, the type of radiation that is referred to as the ethers, it forms in this configuration where it's got what is called an era, or an Ire unit, all right, which is a quantum of Ire. An Ire is a 11 2/3 negative charge base energy. So there is a unit or a sphere of that, and connected, and this is connected to, that would be creation point, right? At the center, that's the point that goes all the way back to the tar, and all the way back to the first particle of creation. Then there's these two, and we have here, this used to be a prana unit. Remember, prana was the 11 2/3 positive charge that was left from the mana. It was the quantum equilibrium that was derived from the mana. And so this was a prana unit that split. It didn't split in half. It split into 1/3 and 2/3. So it has a base quantum of, it has prana chi that is 3.888 quantum particle power as its base, and the prana ki, which has 2 times that, 2 times this, which is 7.776. Now, these are referred to when we talk about, we've talked in other workshops about the core gates of Eartha, the larger star that our planet is sitting in the middle of. We are talking about the prana seed when we talk about that. We've talked about the Taran of our planet and how it got reversed, and that's way back, the smaller light thing. But there's also a prana seed. The prana seed in a stellar body represents the core gates. The prana seed is very important because if something happens in the outer bodies that causes the prana seed to stop phasing, where these two can't move together and spark, and if they spark, you have 2/3 of a prana and 1/3 of a prana, they will spark and make a full prana unit. So they will make a prana backflow spark. That opens the creation point door, sends prana in, and what gets sent back out from what's behind this, which happens to be the Kristalla and the Unici going all the way back to the Tarn, what gets sent back out is mana. And the mana comes back out and is part of the continuation of the process of expansion of the light body and re-energizing the light body. If the prana seed in a stellar body that is manifest, physical manifest form, becomes compacted, where it closes, and because of a reversal of polarity of one of these, or a shifting or breaking of their axis alignment here, it will cause them to compact into the center and close the creation point. That is the point of Bardo, where it starts. That is where Bardo starts. What Bardo is the separation, the progressive separation of the dark matter template from the stuff before it, and the dark matter template from the light body structure and matter structure. So it would be a separating of, how science watches and says, well, we can tell by the effect where they're looking at things that are manifesting in the light body, right? Because what we see as matter exists within the light body structure. They're seeing things that they know dark matter must exist because they can see that influence. Well, this is closing the door to that influence. That influence is cosmic order. It is these Rasha templates, the dark matter templates in bodies, that are holding together the natural form of the outer bodies. And they are also giving the natural circulation. If the prana seed closes, you cannot bring frequency from first creation point through anymore from here out into what would be the outer light body seed atom. So you can't feed the outer light body naturally anymore. You can't backflow energy back to source either from the light body. So that represents the Bardo point when Bardo starts. The Bardo is a progressive separation of the rings. Every one of these rings of the Partiki Rasha body corresponds directly and is connected to energetically a corresponding light body ring. So the light body has a structure like this, a base shield template, it's called, that is larger, but it is structured the same way, and its layers are a direct manifestation of the Rasha body layers. And there's a direct exchange of energy periodically during certain points in the time cycles and the phasing cycles, where a backflow will come from the light body back into the Rasha body, and it will open make the prana seed phase, and then the energy will go back into source, and then the backflow return will come back out and recharge the quantum of the light body. So when we have a prana seed that closes, it starts to close the door between the light body manifestation and its matter forms and the systems built on it and first creation. At this point, each of these rings goes through a cycle, starting with ring 1, which would be the smallest one, of contracting and compacting more. Now, it can't contract, and it sparks, but its sparks start to build up at the core. It can't make a passage into the center point of the prana seed because the prana seed won't phase anymore. And that causes, it starts to build up sparks. When the sparks build up, they build up in layer 1, the first set will build up in layer 1, and then it'll expand a little bit and throw those sparks out into layer 2. What this will do is, because the sparks will actually be reverse polarity because they weren't able to interact with the prana seed in a normal way, or the way a living system would, they will send a backlash out when they try to charge their span. And that will go out into the corresponding, what is called orb, in the auric layers of the light body structures and the chakra systems, etc., connected to the auric layers of the light body structure. These are called ring waves. They are gamma waves that release, they are ring waves of the Rasha that become gamma waves that release from the core of a dying star. They start with number 1, and then progress number 2, and then number 3, and number 4, all the way up until you go all the way out to, I believe, it goes all the way out to 15, I think. It's either 12 or 15. Then you enter something called the Bardet cycle, which is the end part of the Bardo cycle. That is another phase of things that take place as this template separates. You could look at this as the core, and the light body is like, say, if this was the yolk of an egg, and the light body was an egg, a spherical egg, white around it, it's literally separating the core from the light body structure. And there's a certain point at the end, after all these layers have released, because once that ring wave goes, that gamma burst goes, that's when the separation of that ring has happened. The ring and the span of the Rasha body have separated from the corresponding auric layer and orb in the light body structure. It's the difference between living and dead matter, really, because there can be things that don't get up and walk around that are still quite full of spirit and living consciousness, but dead matter is matter that has been evacuated of the spirit consciousness, of the consciousness that normally flows through the rasha structure, through the inner light body structure, back into the spirit body, and then back out again, where the natural circulation is. So they're just getting into teaching us a bit of the difference between they taught us before about dead light and living light, and now they're starting to teach us about dead matter and living matter. And not all matter that appears to be inanimate is necessarily dead. And not all, what? Oh boy. And not all matter that is animate is necessarily alive either. Ooh. Oh, I just got chills on that one. Yucky chills. Ew. Anyway, back to prana seed. We went here, so when we talk about the solar bardo, so you begin to understand what is taking place. The core gates have been forced into compaction. That occurred between March 15th, when the forcing started. Has to do with time rip technology. Borgia time rip technology with the beast technology combined with it, with the threshold technology combined with it. They gave it quite a whack, and they succeeded. They weren't able to do that to Earth. They tried to do that to Earth because they would love to attack Eartha. And they could, because our core is linked to Eartha's core. They weren't able to get Earth because there's too much protection running here at the moment from Eartha. But they did manage to get the Sol, which is our sun. Now, they didn't get the full density, the density 2 stargate, Sala. They didn't close the prana seed there. So Sala is still a functional gate set, still connected to his rasha body, still has the capacity for starfire. Starfire is a simple word for the Kryst star transition, which is the turnaround into the Adashi cycles. And then, so you can go through those and then birth back out again, or birth back. There's several options once you get back into source whole with your entire identity and memory matrix intact. So anyway, when we talk about the sun, the prana seed in the rasha body of the sun that we call Sol, which is at the center of our solar system, has been forced into compaction. The forcing started on March 15th. It culminated in a success of that compaction on the 25th of March. And the first ring wave is due, the beloved said it's due most likely around, it's in spring 2008, but they said most likely right around Hitharo of 2008, which is May 27th. Now, this one, because of the other things that are being done that you'll see in a little bit, they have to do with Aquilian sun fields and the host field and all of that. Because of that, there shouldn't be too much problem. But it may be noticeable. It may knock out satellites. They don't know. We'll find out on the news, I suppose, later. Because if it knocks out satellites, we're not going to have much news for a while. So if anything really weird happens next spring, know why. Like, if communications go down, if it's for a day or half a day or 6 months, I don't know. If something like that occurs, at least you'll have an idea of why. All right? There are gamma bursts of a certain spectrum, and I don't know if they're an identified spectrum yet of gamma bursts that are going to be releasing progressively from the sun, and they are going to move through our entire solar template. Normally what happens when that occurs with the central sun in a solar system, immediately those ring waves will communicate in that broadcast of frequency, of the gamma frequency, will communicate right into the planetary shields or the star shields that are orbiting around it, and they will all shut down together. And the system will die if the central sun goes, if it goes into Bardo. All right. If it weren't for what is called the Crystal River host, it has to do with kind of think of it as a respirator tube called the Anson-Statia passage that is coming from the Aquarian matrix, which is our parallel adjacent Akasha. Parallel adjacent Akasha. Yeah. Anyway, I have to look at that map to see exactly what the words were in it. But the Anson-Statia passage is literally like a respirator tube that is holding open Earth's prana seed. Earth's prana seed is fine. It's at a different angular rotation of particle spin, and Sol, our smaller sun, doesn't have the power to override that. But Earth would normally have gone at the same time within, I don't think they said how long, but it would have been very rapid. At first Mercury, then Venus, etc. But they're running through Sala, which is the larger sun that our sun's soul is connected to. They are running from there, the ancestation passage host, and also from Eartha, and triangulating them down in to Earth's core to hold open our prana seed. So we can still, so anybody on the planet with a lot of hosting help can activate the Rashalay bodies and begin the process of Kryst star transition. And this is key to what's called the Aquafarian shield. The Aquafarian shield is the collective of indigos on the planet and angelic humans on the planet who at certain points in seeding 3 history, this particular round of history on Earth, entered bioregenesis for the DNA to get the kryst codes back with races from Eartha. The Eartha races came partway down and brought our guys partway up, and they created a race line called the Aquafarian, which are half cloister human, angelic human, and half what are called the Bendi Aquari races from Eartha. Now, they're connected to a matrix far, far away in a different Akasha system, in a different Akasha A, actually. So we'll look at that later. But anyway, all of this has to do with the sun. This also has to do with your personal anatomy, because we all have one of these. The entire shield, the Aquafarian shield, holds in its collective shield the imprint of Earth's original Amenti host, its core encryption before it became compromised. Once it was seeded down here, and seeding 1, we had the electric wars wipe them out. There's progressive damage that has been done to Earth's body and to its Rasha body connection since the Amenti rescue mission 550 million years ago. The Aquafarian shield and the hybrid people who came in to hold that shield on planet as a living consciousness field have the ability, they're the only ones, the ones with the Aquari codes, have the ability to heal within themselves more rapidly than others might be able to, the mutations, in order to be able to go through Kryst star activation so they can activate the planet, a host planetary Rasha body that's referred to as the Aurora field, that is referred to as the new ascension Earth. They have the ability to hold, to begin the activation of this field that is known as the New Earth Ascension Field, that is a 3-dimensional holographic space, just like Earth is a 3-dimensional holographic space, between Earth and Eartha, which is the one chance to get any of the life field out of here, so it doesn't all go into fall with this Vecca system. So we're in the middle of something big. People with Aquari codes were the ones who got the call to come to the 12 tribes classes. There was a signature under that. We didn't know much about what they were going to be about. When they first started, we didn't hardly know anything about what they were going to be about, but they were full, and we're going over into the second group of them. The people who responded, for whatever reason they consciously responded, they responded to a frequency that the beloveds had put under that was meant to speak to Aquari codes if you had them in your body. Because they were calling together the gatekeepers, the ones who collectively who could run what's called a Shadra. A Shadra is a group shield, all right, with very specific geometrical configurations between where you place the frequencies, because every body is a light body cell, and it can run frequency. And we were being called to run the elemental command shields, which means to activate the Rasha body. Earth's Rasha body can't activate because of the damage in Earth's grids. It is not fully separated from the light body, but the light body, if the Rasha body tried to activate, the light body couldn't hold it, and the place would implode. But what can activate is the host field, where literally a 3-dimensional holographic field that looks partly like Earth and partly like Eartha has formed. It's already formed by the activation of the Aquafarian shield here and of the Aquafarian races who have been residing in those bands, not quite in a solid form like we know. They have gone solid in order to meet us as we become a bit less solid. So there is a field that is literally a birth of a planet. Star. Earth, the Ascension Earth is a star. It has a coronosphere. And we are part of, the tribes classes were about activating the Rashalay bodies in order to allow for the progressive rebirth or birth of the aurora host field, the new ascension Earth, so there was a path out. And this is why they wanted us to understand a bit about prana seed. I'm trying to bring together some of the larger things and not just like bore you to death with anatomy, because it helps keep you awake, and also because you need to know it. So the prana seed is at the center of the partiki body, which is the rasha body. There's something that happens after this, as if this wasn't complicated enough. I'm not going to read all these things right now. We'll get into what are called the Navajo cycles, which are the birthing cycles. They're at the end of what's actually a yuga cycle, and you would have at 6, at the halfway through the 6th axis, at Hithara and Hithalan, is where you would have the Navajos beginning, and when it hit the 7th axis, that's where you'd have birth of the first Partakai, and that's called the Immaculate Conception. All right, because the first Partakai is not touched. The lawn's fertilized, but it is pristine. It is a virgin birth. It has not been pierced by Partakai 2 yet. When we come back to the 0 line, that's when Partakai 1 loses its virginity. Yeah. And that is the point where Partakai 2 births, and right there, the creation of the triad happens, and it goes right into the triad, which is trimester 1 of the Siddha cycle. And from there, there's trimester 2, which is the Akusha cycle, and there's trimester 3, which is the Rusha cycle, and trimester 4, which is the Risha cycle, and then you get birth of the term. So there are things that we're going to learn about tomorrow, but they're all connected to this anyway. So these would be the core gates. They're the core prana seed. They're known as, when we talk about in the planetary core, when we start talking about Rasha in terms of the planet and the vertical maps, we're going to see that there are gates. We have the 12 main planetary Templar stargates and a whole bunch of other interface systems that have been trying to get activated to get us out of here before it got this bad. But there are, at the core, 3 core gates. And what they are the prana seed. And you can pass through the center of this one, 13. What usually happens when they cycle naturally, these two come back together because one's negative, one's positive, and they draw toward each other at the creation point line, and they spark right there, make a prana spark. That sparks open the creation point going back into the domains before it, or into the inner light body before it. And they send a backflow in, then a backflow return comes out. They also go in momentarily and then come back out. 14 and 15. So you can travel through any of these and move through into Rasha states or beyond Rasha states. They're going to tell us more about how that works too, because somewhere back there I think we have the dhala-luma, dhala-luma, right? As far as a doorway of spirit light, where the illumination of spirit comes forth into the light body through the Rasha body. So we're just learning about that one. These are the basic structures. And of a Navajo cycle, which starts right before the Hitharo point when you enter cycle 6, that's called the Nava cycle. And there are 4 rounds of prana exchange in the Nava cycle, okay, which would take care of rings 1 through 4. Right? Then it moves into what's called the Nave cycle, and that would be the Hitharo cycle. And that particular cycle corresponds with 5 through 8 rounds. And the rounds are rounds of 12 plus 1 breaths, as they call it. And a breath would be an inhale, contraction, and an exhale, expansion. Right? So on the 13th exhale, that would be the finishing of a round. So when we talk about rounds, 1 round would be 12 plus 1 breaths. So you end up with, you have a set of 4 here. You have another set, the Nave, in the Hithara cycle that corresponds to rings 5 through 8 that takes care of charging them, sparking and charging them. And then there's a point that is reached where it goes into what's called a Navi cycle until the Navi harmonic is reached. And the Navi harmonic is reached at the point where the Hithalan, because Hithalan would correspond with the Navi cycle, when the Hithalan ends, where we end up at the 7 axis, that's called the Navi harmonic, and it immediately triggers what is called the Navehosa. Now, the Navehosa is when the conception occurs. That's when the Partakai 1 is born. Before that, the fertilization of the lans takes place. That would represent conception of the lans that takes place after fertilization. All right, and this is before soul integration. I mean, once we get through all of this stuff, eventually we can downstep this to understand the process of birth by which babies are supposed to be made and by which the mutation is actually changing that and making it so the cell structure, the first core cell structure, is not coming out in the right configuration. And that's what's holding the mutation in our bodies. And we'll progressively learn to heal that first cell imprint that is distorted by these planetary grids. So it's all connected, not just to big stuff or invisible stuff you can't see, but right down to the fertilization and conception of egg and sperm coming together to make a baby body, and then where does the spirit come from? So there's a point where I'm sure the spirit body opens to allow for the spirit to come through, unless the prana seed is closed, which means it would have to be something incoming from the light body structure. If it couldn't come in through the natural connection between the Rasha bodies and the light bodies, it would have to be something already stuck out in the light body structures incarnating in. And that's what they've tried to do here. They've tried to mutate the angelic human form and the cloister forms here, and especially the Aquafarian ones, because they had the gate codes to Eartha and Sala. They tried to mutate them so they could incarnate into those gene codes and try to reverse the spin on the gates in order to raid Eartha and Sala to get control of the bottom part of our universal Vaka, because they already did a pretty good job of wiping out the top part of our universal Vaka. So it was all part of a large, nasty plan. Here we sit at the end of it. Fortunately, we are able to activate this. Because of the Aquafarian shield sitting at the center of the indigo shield, which sits at the center of the angelic human shield, as long as the Aquafarian shield can activate theirs, it will send those frequencies out to the indigo shield that don't have Aquari codes, a part of them, because some of the indigos do have Aquari codes and some don't. It will send those frequencies out to them, and they will be able to send them out to the angelic humans, and the angelic humans have the downstep that goes out to the animal kingdoms and plant kingdoms. I think plant kingdoms and animal kingdoms, and then the other kingdoms. So it is a progressive bringing the healing of the Rasha in to where it's accessible. The frequencies are accessible in a hosted form without the host of the Aquafarian shield, which is the earth end of the host, and there's lots more of the host that's up above us as far as Eartha and Sala and going all the way up the gate structures in this Veka and crossing over to 3 different Akasha matrices. So this is a huge host, and it was set a very long time ago, between 480 billion and 450 billion years ago. And that's a long time. That's before the fall of Lyra here. What happened back then, we'll talk about later, was because that is why the fall of Lyra occurred. After that, the fall of Metatron occurred. All of it came back to one point in time, to a matrix called the Borgia matrix. And we'll look at that in a little while. But anyway, here we are back at Pranaseed. We're going to move through these. We can some day get to the end of this pack of diagrams, so we can get you to the ones that show you the vertical maps. And then we can get on to, not too long discussion hopefully, on the Eye of God, because that is a journey that is very precious. It's a journey that begins the process of opening the core structures from the outer Rasha body and light body into the middle domain Edens, into the Adons of the inner domain, and then back into the core. It begins the process of opening all the way to the core, the creation core, the first creation point, the first Partakai. And this is the first step in activating the body, participating in a Kryst star activation for the first part, first part of the kale-hara cycle. Anyway, next one, please. Sometimes the wave comes through in very strange ways. I just go like way over here and over there. Now we're back here again. We're still in the formation of the Rasha body, even though we're getting lots of information about where this goes, what it does, what it's connected to. All right, so we had the Rasha body with its 15 rings and 15 spans that were the bands, right? And its prana-seed at the center. The next thing it does, let's see, what forms here through this and the next diagram is called the Navajo cell, the Navajo elemental command cell. And it is in the dark matter template. And this is where the elemental command stations that form the elemental forces out here in a light body structure, this is where they start. When we do Shadra stands, which are literally you stand in certain configurations, very specific ones, and there's different types of one to use for different reasons. What you are doing is standing and holding the positions of one of the Shadras is using the diagram you'll see after this, which is the shape of a monad, where you're standing and allowing those particular forces to, you're being one with those forces in order to bring them here to activate the corresponding levels of the Rasha bodies in order to bring those frequencies into the corresponding levels of the light bodies and the matter bodies in order to assist in the transfiguration and re-spiritualization of matter. What? I know what I said, but it came out so fast. It was like, I'm going, whoa. Yeah, they're trying to pick up the pace, I think. Anyway, we're still in the Partiki body, the Rasha body, and the first thing that happens after it reaches a certain point of, and I think it's, well, where are we? We are at the Ra 10, all right, at the 10.5 line, these formed. I wouldn't doubt if, they haven't explained fully, actually, all of this yet, but if, I think it's after a couple of those ASCO phasing cycles or enough quantum builds, then it goes partially in. I think, yeah, all right. Thank you. It pulls in, but only this much of itself to the Ra 10 level actually pulls into what's behind it. And what's behind this body is what is back there? The seed atom, right? The unisci seed atom. And that causes the unisci seed atom to pull back further. So all of the things take a step back and open the creation point door, where the Taran steps back a bit and opens the creation point door to let currents directly come in from source. And what bursts out first after that is the first four. They're called the harmonic Partiki body flame spheres, or the 5 Nava. All right, the elemental core command photo flame generator cells. They birth into the Partiki body after, here we go. Okay, this is after 4 12+1 rounds. So this is the Nava cycle, right? This is why they call it the Nava cycle, the first 4 rounds. It's not after a full 12. It's after the first 4 rounds, which means the first 4 rings have, the rings have sparked and charged their spans. And that creates these. And these create the what are called the 5 inner elemental commands. At the center, there's a sphere that is the ethers, or the cloud command, and that controls the ethers. And here you have the liquids and fluids. This is called the flows command, or the water command. That's command number 3. Command number 2, and I think 1 was the ethers, right? 1 is ether, right? Yeah, it goes up that way. Yeah, the 1 is the ethers. Number 2 is the crystal command, or the earth command, and earth not spelled E-A-R-T-H, earth spelled U-R-T-H. The which is light, which has to do with the Tha frequencies. All right, so earth, which is another word for it, is crystal command, and it is the ones that become the primary matter substances that form solids. All right, now there's another, over here is 3, so you have 1, 2, 3, 4 is over here. This is the wind command, or the air command, and this is the template and the substance from which things that form as their main force, gases. And over here is 5. This is referred to as the fire command, or the flame command, and this forms, it's formed of substance called the vapors, and it is command number 5. So these are positioned this way in the Rasha body. This is the Rasha body, and it is now birthing out its elemental command cell, first with the Nava harmonic cells, and the next thing you'll see is these phase by actually pulling in to the center and sparking each other, and they generate quantum that way. And, running through these, of course, and they make quantum as they connect with the ethers. And that builds quantum and makes it pull in again. And I think that the next pulling in again, I think, happens at the end of the 8th round. This happened at the end of the 4th round of 12+1 prana exchange, or prana in, mana out exchanges of the Rasha body. And the next one forms this. Next one, please. You have your 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And each of those produce two more. All right? Flame, fire from the fire command, or the vapors. Flame, fire, vapor. You have flows, waters from the... I think each of these have a different name. There's waters and something. There's liquids, fluids, and something else. Yeah, there's another... This was really fast where we put these in, but it shows you that they're connected with that one of the 5 main commands. All of them are connected to the ethers, all of the commands. And then there's the 4 inner ones, and then these form from the outer ones. And this is the configuration of what is known as the monad, the monadic configuration. These are phase cycles here, phase generators. Each of them is a generator cell. And not only now do these pull in and spark the ethers, but these come together. These this way, these two this way, these two this way, these two this way. And these generate more sparks. These are the things that generate the spark pulse currents that come out from the Rasha body and into expansion into the light body. So these will take the currents from the prana seed that's way down there in the center, and they will pick up the currents that are coming up from, remember the Rosetta way back down there when we had the Tarn and it did its first cycle to form the Unisai? Right before the Unisai, it had those cell clusters that were the Rosetta. And then in there you had a Hara when you had the Unisai. Those currents would be coming through the center of the ethers with the prana seed. And then these would be these particular structures interact with those currents to create another type of currents that form the 15, I believe, Jalesic states of matter, which are the templates behind what... They're energy templates that govern what sparks, how sparks will form quarks, and how quarks will form atoms, and how atoms will form atomic bonds to form elements when they come out into the light body level. All right, next one, please. Well, where am I? Up in here, I need to see. Particular body spans hold the 15 orbita crystal bands. I'm just trying to read what this. Why I need this one here? Encryption programs, yeah, orbita crystal bands. Okay, they were talking about. Oh, this one is showing a couple of things. We've seen this diagram before in relation to the Partaki, where you have the different names of the rings, right, and then the spans in between them. They have the combination. The name encryption of the combination of the two that are on either side of it. When we are activating Rasha body, the way to activate Rasha body, there's a specific sequence. And activating Rasha body means initiating the prana exchange and beginning that process. Because at a certain point in that process is when there's enough quantum build where the next particle births out and then the second particle for the next domain. And in the outer domain, when you're doing that, you are re-spiritualizing, begin the process of re-spiritualizing the outer domain body, which is 3/3 manifest and no thirds behind the creation point door. And you're re-spiritualizing it to the point where it can go through into a half and half pull-in and then pop back out to where its natural state will be 2/3 manifest instead of 3/3 and 1/3 in spirit, and that's how you enter the Adashi cycles. So when we use what are called span tones and ring tones, the span tones refer to the bands. The span tones activate the bands. The ring tones activate the rings in between them. That's why they're called ring tones. And at a certain point, when it reaches... and I think it's somewhere else I have that written. When I talk more about prana exchange, which is supposed to be at the end of this, I've kind of put it all the way through, there is a point where the polarity charges that are characteristic of each of the bands each of the rings and spans depolarize, and the whole thing turns into an orb of energy, where without any Jalesic rings. And at that point is where the whole thing can pull in to creation point, pop back out, and with it birth the next the Partikai 1. I think that they never finished telling me that, but from what they told me here about Partikai 1 being born, I do believe that's what happens, where the whole Rasha body will depolarize its layers, pull in to the domain before it, which is pull into the seed atom area. Pulling in of the Rasha body will cause what didn't actually, as we're going outward, it's not grown yet, but once it's there, this happens on a regular basis as the breathing cycle. But when the Rasha body steps back into where the seed atom is, the seed atom steps back to where the Tarn is, Tarn steps back to where the spirit is. What that does to the outer light body is bring the light body back into the Rasha state. And that's what it means to enter Rasha and to be able to do projection. You get to a certain point of Rasha, and the beginning part of Rasha is probably like one, I don't know if it's a third or a quarter, but where you can begin to use the Rasha body for gliding, which means you can get part of your consciousness here out and move with it in the Rasha state. But you can't get the body out yet. At a certain point, you can slide. And I believe that's that halfway point. We're just starting the point of the kale-hara. Halfway through the kale-hara cycle, we hit a kale-krysta point. That is the point where the dedensification starts to happen. That is the point where we can begin to slide physically. All right. So, and there is a time scale as far as the indigo shield needing to be able to do this at least to some degree in order to be able to hold the host here to continue the transmutation of the solar gamma bursts and things that are coming in. Because the collective indigo shield on this planet is actually like a big bubble that is absorbing those frequencies and can use them in a natural way, because we can run Rasha currents. But these are Rasha currents. We can turn them back around and run those currents and use them for healing and more rapid activation of ourselves. So it is all about the activating the rings and the spans to eventually lead to building enough quantum through the phasing of it makes the elemental command Navajo cell, that whole thing with the 12. Actually, I think there's 12, 13, and then 14. There's actually 15 cells to that, by the way. I didn't point that out. You see the 12 of them in the Ruche type configuration, but then there's the center one, that's 13. Then you have another one that goes around the 4, and that's 14, and then one that goes around the outer 8, and that's 15. So that is a 15-cell structure, and that's where you end up getting the 15 states of matter from the elemental command Navajo cell in the Rasha body. So anyway, the ring tones and the span tones are meant to activate these in order to allow the elemental command Navajo cell to phase, which will allow for the birth of the particle for the next cycle out, which allows you to begin the quantum leap period, particularly if you're in an outer domain. All of the domains have a cycle similar to this. They all have a Rasha body. I believe the Rasha body, so far from what I can figure out, the first Rasha body for the core, I believe, is the particle. I think that's how that works. And then we have the unicygates born and all of that kind of thing. I mean, there may be someone in there that they didn't show me yet that has to do with the Sita cycles, because they're right on the other side of that whole 7 through 9 period. You go from the 0-8 point to the 9-1 point. That is the Sita cycle, and that's what we're just learning about. But anyway, I'll be quiet on that one. Yes, thank you. And they just said, I said, okay, I'm moving. Next one, please. Was that them or you? Because it's usually you doing that. It's amazing that I can hear them, and sometimes I have to go, wait a minute, what angle did it come from? Is it you guys? And they kind of go, no. And he kind of goes, would I do that? Yes. Anyway, what happens next with the phasing of the Navajo cell, elemental command cell of the Rasha body? More quantum is built and generated that allows for the, can we bring that down? I just want to see what we call this to make sure. All right, we're still in the body, but it forms the phasing of it forms what are called the 5 elemental planes. The 5 elemental planes, each of them having a set of 3 rings and spans associated with them. It forms the inner core, and when it forms the inner core, which is solid, but inside of that there is the ether, the ethers. All right? But then you would have a crystal solid core around, and that would correspond with rings 1, 2, and 3, and bands 1.5, 2.5, and 3.5. Then coming out next, you have what's called the liquid core, or the aquifers, and that would correspond to bands 4, 5, and 6. And I mean, to rings 4, 5, and 6 and their corresponding spans. Then when we come out here, we have the solids, or the mantle, and the earth, right? So we have 7, 8, and 9. This area here, as we'll see very soon, and when we see this in terms of a planet or a star, this becomes the crust. Right? We have the Ka-9 field and the Ra-10 field. And we have the Ka-Ra, the Krust. This is where the matter skin forms. And this is, on a planetary level, what we call the Earth's crust. Beneath that, there are actually 3 levels of mantle. Underneath that, there are the aquifers of the core flows. And inside of that, there are the core crystal beds. And inside of those, there are the ethers where the prana seed and the 3 core gates exist. When we take journeys in the planetary one, we use the vertical maps, which are just a cross-section of these going up. A little bit more complicated, as you'll see. But we use them to chart the safe passageways out so we can get up into the fields that will allow for more rapid activation of our own Rasha bodies in order to activate the aquiferian shield on the planet in order to hold the host on the planet. Anyway, out here, excuse me, we have 10, 11, and 12 rings here. They form what are the atmosphere, which are the gas or wind commands, or control that, and that is the substance. The substance from those commands create the frequencies of these parts, these planes. And out here we have what would be the coronosphere, and these are the vapors. They're considered the vapors, or the fire ones, that were from the fire part of the elemental command of Ehosel. So the 5 density planes form, and they each have a different type of density. One are the ethers, which is considered the cloud command, and the second one are the liquids. Then we have the solids. Then we have the gases, and then we have the vapors, which when we take this to the next stage, we see that there are different types of plasma. Next one, please. "15 states of matter created by the 5 elemental commands." All right, these are the 5 main commands. We had the ethers, the earth, the solids, the waters, the liquids, known as the flows, the airs or the gases, and the fires or the vapors. All right. Now, each of these, this is called plasmos. The ethers are called plasmos. The solids are called magnos. Magnos. The flows or liquids are called hydros. Now, these are the first 5 types of radiation that are becoming matter forms, right? These are specifically different types that have a different base quantum number, power of how many particuli. They would have a different polarity charge, that kind of thing. They're different from each other, and they are formed through that Navejo cell that's part of the Rasha body. Then you would have the 4, is called thermos, and that would be the air gas command. And then you would have the electros, which would be the fires or the vapors. So vapors are electros, the gases are thermos, the liquids are hydros, the solids are magnos, and the ethers are plasmos. And they are the first 5 types of matter that form, or things that become what? Form the quarks that build up to become matter on the outside. Next, these combine with each other this way, right? Where this one and this one will mix, this one and this one will mix, this one and this one will mix, this one and this one will mix. And they form an ether solid, a solid liquid, a liquid gas, a gas vapor. So now you had 5, and you have 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay? These are considered, by the way, the density. These form the density 5. All right, coronosphere layers, that whole band of them are characteristic of it. But here, coming down, this set of 4 form the hydroplasm of density 4. Okay, hydroplasmic liquid light kind of thing. Coming down here, these combine with each other. And when those 4 combine with each other, they form 3, which are ether, solid, liquid. Now, these formed 4, each with 2 qualities of matter. Now, the 4 form 3, each with 3 qualities of matter. These are called the ectoplasm frequencies, or matter bases. All right, these are characteristic of density 3, right, which would be dimension 7, 8, and 9, right, where density 4 was dimension 10, 11, and 12. And these would be characteristic of density 5, 13, 14, and 15. Coming down, these 3 combine and form 2, each with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, each with 6 characteristics. And that forms the density 2 endoplasm of D4, 5, and 6. And then we have 1. These two combined, all of these to form 1. And this is where we get the density 1 matter base, which is plasma for D1, 2, and 3. And this has all of them, I think. Does it? Yeah, I think it does. 1, 2, they never counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That one has 12 properties. So there are 15 states of matter, 15 types of matter that form, and this one has 12 properties in the density 1 fields. So this is how the elemental commands in the Rasha body form the matter states that begin the process of materialization, not just manifestation, but the next step is materialization, turning that manifest energy into material, or mata, or... All right, next one, please. Eventually, we will be able to plug that information into the Beloved's version of a periodic table of elements, because there's supposed to be 144 elements. So all of that eventually leads to from which command, you can tell, forms which. I'm not even going to go into this because it's been a while since I looked at it and I couldn't say it properly the first time through. These are things that eventually will be published. We don't have any of what they are yet. But here you would see an atomic symbol, and there would be an atomic number, which is the number of protons and electrons, right? There would be categories of which type were metals, which type were this, which type were that. So this corresponds to the periodic table of elements. And I just wanted you to see where all of that, where that comes from, where those things come from. Out here, they come from back here, from the Rasha body and the Navajo cell of the Rasha body, the elemental command cell. Next one, please. Thank you. As if all that weren't enough. Yeah, down here, please. Yeah. Oh boy, here we go. Now, remember, we were still growing the Rasha body, right? So we got to the point where we had the Rasha template, we had the Rasha body, and we had the Rasha elemental planes, right, that had the density planes. Next, and I forget exactly where it is, and if I could read at this point, but my eyes are too tired, I would probably be able to tell you which part of what prana cycle and how many prana cycles it takes before that whole thing pulls in to what's before it and replicates back out 1, 2, 3, 4. And it creates 4 15 Jaleesic layer spheres that are interwoven with each other. I'm showing you here the spheres, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Now all that, the Rasha body and all that, would be in there. This is the full Rasha body, right? Before it was like growing Rasha body. So each one of these has the 15 Jaleesic rings and spans. So there are 4 embedded ones. And they spin. And in their spinning, I don't think it's the next one, though. I don't want to go there too fast. Anyway, these actually end up forming 7. The ones that spin clockwise, which are the first ones that form, they are called the Ettore bodies. And they, in their clockwise spin, form a counterspin, a set of currents that go counterspin and form spheres that form what are called the Adore bodies. So you have 3 Adore. We've talked about the Adore side, where the Ettore side of creation, and there's the Adore side. The Adore side would be on counterspin, but in the same place we are. That's where we get races like the Adonai that have been assisting us with all of this. We met those after we met the Iani, and the Eka was going to fall here. They brought in the other side of this Eka. We share an Eka seed. So this is where those words start to come from, where we have the Ettore side, which is a clockwise positive charge, and the Adore side, which is the counterclockwise negative charge that forms in between these. So you have 4 of these, and between 1 and 2, you have Adore 1. Between 2 and 3, you have Adore 2. And between 3 and 4, you have Adore 3. So it makes 3 more. And they're considered the 7 suns. All right, the 7 sun systems, and they're still in the Rasha body. And remember, each one of these has 15 Jaleesic layers. So we've got lots of fields. These are called, at this point, fields and shields. All right? Yeah. Next one, please. This is just looking at, which one? Can you see the, yeah, there's still 4B. Okay. We are looking at this point, just what it would look like with 2 of those embedded. If I had put the first one, say number 1, then number 2, then number 3, and then number 4, first of all, it wouldn't have fit on the page. And if I'd put number 1 in there, you wouldn't have been able to see anything as far as what's crossing through what. Because the layers of the Jalizic rings of, say, number 1, which would be the first one, would be in here. It's at that expansion where the top and bottom of the smaller one would land in the Rajna and the Iyumbilak of the next one up, so you can tell the sizes. Right? So you take the one 15-layer Rasha body, and then you enlarge the next one to where that mathematical alignment is, and it gives you the structure of the next one out, and then you can start seeing where they overlap with each other. This becomes important in understanding the planes because these set the program, or these are the dark matter things that organize the light body. So when the light body does finally get born, it will have these configurations. So there will be 4 layers of 15, there will be 4 sets of 15 Jalizic layers to the light body structures, what is called the base shield, the light body base shield, because of this. And this is where we start to get the clue about the maps, about what are called the vertical maps. Next one, please. I'm not going to name all of those and try to... yes, so.
The coffee bringer has to be arranged for the has been arranged for 11 months of the days. The coffee break is happening anytime really.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so as was just letting me know that the coffee break was arranged for 11, so we'll take a short break there where you can have some coffee and use a bathroom and that kind of thing. And when we get back, we're going to get into the good stuff, and I'll try to do that pretty fast, and it should go because there's not anything, I hope, new being added to it. But that's 10 minutes, I think, from now, according to my watch, is it? Yeah? Okay. Okay. Well, everybody leaving. It will give me a chance to finish this set. I'm almost to the Big Bang. Anybody out there that wants to hear about the Big Bang, I suggest coming back in for 5 minutes because I'm not going to pick back up here. Yeah, we're almost done. We got 10 minutes till the 11 o'clock coffee break, and I can be done by then to Big Bang. And then we can all go and have a Big Bang with the coffee. Okay. So this is just showing us the 4 layers that I talked about before, the 4 expansions of the Rasha body, the 15-layer Rasha body, and the counter spheres that form, because they are spinning clockwise, these counter spheres form between them. So together you end up with a set of 7 15-layer structures, but the ones that interface directly, that form the planes that we will deal with that go from our core all the way up to our atmosphere and out and wherever Eartha is and beyond where Eartha is. These core structures show us a lot of things about what our planet is made out of, about what our atmosphere is made out of, and about where something called the Adashi temples are located. Because Eartha has 12 specific Adashi temples that are various things, including the stargates that you need to take out to get through a Hara cycle. They are the stargates that would take you into Starfire. If you made it all the way to Eartha's surface, you would be able to do a full Starfire with Eartha, because Eartha is doing a full turnaround between 2047 and 2052. And that's when Eartha's going. However, Earth and Ascension Earth will not be ready to do it at that point, and that's good, because not too many people from here are going to make it that far up to Earth by then. That's where the Aurora field comes in and the Ascension Earth, because there will be about 223 years, they tell me now, where we can evolve, and the people here can evolve to the point where, by going into those fields progressively, where they can experience a natural starfire ascension cycle. All right, so anyway, we're back to here. This is still not quite to the Big Bang yet. The Big Bang happens after we got the 4 sets of 15. They're called the sheaths. Okay, there's 4 sheaths, and this is where we get, when we look at Kathara, right? Kathara grids, even on the outer light body, you get D1, D2, D3, and then the density one around it. Okay, so this is showing you the structure. We've been working with these structures all along. Anyway, next one, please. Almost to bang, almost. Oh, please get to bang already. I get so tired sometimes, I really do. I didn't mean you, I meant it. I meant it. Right, as if they weren't enough. Then there's a formation. They were the 7 inner suns. Now they're the 7 outer set. They go in and they pop out and they make a set of 4 more sheaths that create 7 more outer suns. And these form what are called the base shield templates of what becomes the Yukatharista light body. Next one, please. Is it the bang? Is it the bang yet? Oh, it's not the bang yet. Now what? Yes, wait. All right. Yes, it is. Okay, wait a minute. We have a base shield. Yeah, all right. This is just looking at one layer. Remember, there are 4 sets of 15 of them in each other. But the base shields of the aura bodies, right? The aura bodies are what were in the Rasha body, were the rings, become the auras, the aura layers. All right, when we talk about our auric field and that kind of stuff of our light body. And in between them, what were the spans become what are called the orbs, the crystal orbs. And the crystal orbs are directly connected to what are called the kushas that we'll learn about later. And when we activate orbs, we activate what's called the aquiline sun frequencies in our fields. It is the Rasha body activations that create in the auric field the activation of the orbs around the auric layers. And the outer light body processes and phases in its own way, just like the Rasha body does. It has fire chambers. It has sets of the Elan, Shalon, and Kalon and Oron crystals that set. So the light body also is meant to, when it's healthy, generate its own spark pulse currents as well. And there's supposed to be an exchange of currents all the way through from source back and forth at different time intervals. And this gives us the manifest holographic experience of space and time in a 3-dimensional system. This is what manufactures space-time, or the illusion of it. Because technically, all of it is just consciousness. And we're having a really, really deep holographic dream while we're walking around down here. Next one, please. Where's the bang? There is one somewhere that has the bang. This is showing you that. This is called the Oort body, like the Oort cloud that surrounds our solar system out there, someplace that science knows is there, right? This is, again, showing you the density layers that form of the light body base shield before the Yukatharista Big Bang. All right, it forms the mantle. I swear there was a Big Bang in there before this. All right, but okay, which one? No, though. There's supposed to be one that shows the Yukatharista body. You know, the thing. The thing. It might have gotten stuck somewhere else. Let me see that. Is that it? There's the bang. There's the bang. It looks like it from here. It is. It's the bang. Where was that in that sequence? That was next. Okay, good. Right. So we had the base shield formed, right, where you had again the layers, but now you have the Oort body that is the density planes on the light body level, coming outward, and then there's the big where the whole thing pulls in and goes bang, right. And it creates the entire Yukatharista body structure that we learned about with the echo maps of the God World gates. This is the whole big thing, all at once. Just right? That's the Big Bang, where the science knows that somehow the universe as we know it started there. Well, it started a lot further back than there. Yes, there was once a singularity. And that became a Taran, and that became a Rasha body. And the Rasha body is the dark matter template that creates this entire structure. And at some point they're going to show us how in these little light cells that the interaction of the frequencies out here in the outer light body interact with the Rasha body, and they create what is a skin of crystallized or frozen light from the light body. And that is what we know as perceivable matter. And once we start to understand that, we can understand all sorts of things about influencing or working with the elemental command consciousness fields that are a part of that, where we begin to learn elemental command of our own bodies, which we will need to have some degree of proficiency in if we are ever going to make an Adashi turnaround. And that's why they're going to take us to the Adashi temples, because everybody's going to need their own personal somebody to talk to, and there's not enough of us down here, so we're all going to need help. And that's why they're teaching us to glide and then to slide, so they can meet us one-on-one and sometimes in small groups and start training us on the big stuff that I just can't translate and I can't draw, and there's not enough time. So anyway, I think it's probably coffee break time. That's the Big Bang. When you cut, the rest of the body comes out. Oh, it's 1 minute to 11 on my watch. I'm actually early for once. Probably my watch. That looks pretty good anyway. Before we get into graphology again, to finish this sequence that is essential to doing the Eye of God journey, we got a little nudge when we went upstairs. The beloveds have requested a specific change in later tonight's schedule because of something that they didn't tell me about before because it was on security clearance, but they did tell me about it now because we have to get it organized. I've mentioned briefly in the larger workshops that the smaller 12 tribes groups that are like 24 people, we do what are called shadras. A shadra is a very specific group shield that is formed. Now, it's not a shield that you open your fields to the group. All right, we never ever teach that. These are, you have your own protections. I mean, Maharic Seal was just the beginning ages ago, but at this time you got your Rasha body protection running in your fields. But a person who can run Rasha body frequencies has the ability, you are very powerful anchoring rods. And there is a very powerful activation coming in tomorrow evening. This is the first time they've ever requested this, and talk about a leap of faith and going, oh my God, for us especially as, bless him, because I'm good on paper. I can put them on paper. But when it comes to getting bodies in the right place, aligned with the right north, south, east, west, in the right shapes at the right angles to each other, which is what a shadra is, you form a living geometric entity of the elemental command kingdoms when you do this. And this is what the 12 tribes classes have been doing. This is the first time we've been asked to do one with not 24 people, not even 48 people, like was what was going to be for 12 tribes, 2 sets of classes. We've been asked, bless you as, to do a very specific shadra tomorrow evening when the big activations are coming through, which is going to require clearing the chairs out of the room. If there are people who have to sit or whatever because you can't like lay down on the floor, or well, actually you don't have to lay down, you can sit down. They haven't told us exactly whether some shadras, the shield stands, spins, does Merkaba, or walks around. Eventually they dance. All right, but we don't want to get people killing each other by bouncing off each other quite yet. Right? Even in the 12, the groups of 2 sets of 12, we don't do the dancings and the movements and the energy flow. It's kind of like Tai Chi Guardian style, but bigger. Right? The dancing shields. Eventually, that's where it's going. And these are the most powerful energy constructs. They are the creation constructs of elemental command. You work not commanding and telling elementals what to do, but you work in cooperation with the core elemental forces. And eventually you can do things like, if you're having a drought in your area, you can gently ask in the right way, called a shadra, the rains to come in. The old primitive dances used to be about this. Even with Native Americans and Native peoples of other countries, they still have their fire circles with their dancing and that kind of stuff. They might have lost the technicals on why these have been traditions passed down by oral tradition and movement tradition, demonstration for ages. But they were all doing the same thing. They were working with, and they still are, elemental command. Now, some of them, because of, the obvious problems this planet has, have been going into stands and elemental command shadras that they are actually using the feet to put bass pulse rhythms and frequency into the grids that is helping with the finishing of the reversal of the planetary shields and finishing the fall, where once upon a time, the cellular memory of doing these things that became the primitive dances here, it was all about knowing the technicals and knowing exactly how to do them in the right way to serve the Kryst and to bring the frequencies through. The big celebrations of the dancing shields were the times when at the ends of Kali Yuga cycles, even if they were just a planetary level one, because of the frequencies coming into the planet and the relationship between the sun and the planet, that even on a smaller level were huge as far as the frequencies usually run, the Chadras stabilized the stargates, the Chadras stabilized the planetary grids, and they allowed for those frequencies to run through the shields in the right geometric. So if there's any damage in the shields, the Chadras would assist in overriding that. They might not be able to fix the damage. Sometimes they could actually clear the damage, but they could at least create a host that the frequencies could ride over the damage, not crash into it and cause the planet to roll or something like that. So the Chadras, the dancing shields, they'll come eventually, because you have to learn to dance standing still first, what the postures are, what the seers are what are they called? What are they called? They begin with S. Sariyas, that's it. Thank you. Yes. They're moving Sariyas, and not just moving in one place, moving while spinning Merkaba, while going in a circle with hundreds of other people. They're quite a dance troupe. They're beautiful when they're done. The way the Beloveds on Eartha and the Aquafarian races in the Ascension Earth field do them, they're just magical to watch. They're amazing. But you've got to start somewhere. Right? So they started with 12 tribes classes. They started beginning it earlier when they taught us how to do stands, simple configuration stands where we'd spin the Merkabas in certain directions and sing certain tones that activated light body fields. That was way back. At this point, we're going core elemental command with Rasha body activations. But this is the first time we have ever been asked, being asked to take a quantum leap of organizing not just a group of 24 people into a specific Chadra configuration, which looks like, they usually look like the monad or the Navajo cell, which looks like the monad or the Ruche configuration. But we're being asked to have two sets of Ruche configurations at 45-degree angles to each other with a band of 15 bands of 12 around them. Yes, they haven't told us whether we can just sit still. Just getting that far is going to be quite amazing. But there's an amazing intimacy that the more you work with Chadras, that you start to feel a connection with the group of people you're working with, but also with the earth, with Eartha, and with the elemental command consciousness cells themselves. And it can be very magical. So they have asked us, for those of you who are willing, and desire to participate, that with the amount of people here, that's somewhere around 200, 205, they said we could do like the 24 in the center in the double Ruche configuration, and then the 15 bands outside of that, ideally with 12 in them. Yeah, we've got to figure out how to fit that shape here. You know what they're going to do. I can see, I just saw it. They're going to do what's called a crystal heart code. They're going to do a Navajo. Okay, yeah, I just got the hair stood up. Yeah, around the center of the two. Yeah, okay. Which you'll see, those of you who don't know what a Navajo crystal heart is, we'll show you what that is when we get through this next graph sequence. But what they also requested is, there is an option of, at 12:12 tonight, doing the Eye of God journey. You cannot do the Eye of God journey if we don't get you through that material in the first place, because you won't be able to pick up the frequency wave that actually gets you there if you don't understand a bit of where it's placed, what it has to do with everything, what it is. Okay? So they would prefer if we would do the journey. We'll get you right up to understanding what the Eye of God is tonight. Let you go and go to sleep. Then in the earlier part of the day, because we weren't going to start till 3:30 anyway, because I have God knows how many hours of taking down the new information and how many graphs are going to come out of that. But we're going to do the journey for 12:12 noon tomorrow. Now, we're not going to do that in a Chadra, because we'd have to get that was an option. The beloved said, well, that would be fun, right? And I was just like, we'll have to move 200 chairs out of the room, then move them back in for 3:30. What? And that was a bit of a logistics issue. Like, it's going to take a while to do that. And it's not necessary to do the Eye of God journey in a Shadra configuration, at least not here. They're letting us know that the next couple of workshops that lead up to FOL are going to have the option of people wanting to do large group geometrics with us to assist in anchoring each of the large frequencies that are coming in that have to do with the Sala Kali chamber. So what we'll do is, I'm not sure, what time do you want to bring people together for that?